is recording. All right, the reason I do the videos is because not everybody can make every class. They're posted out on my Facebook page, so if you miss one, you can just go watch it. And I'm usually getting, on most of these class videos, I'm getting a couple of dozen of views within the group here. But most of them, particularly this Heaven series we just finished up, several of them went over 500 views. So so I'm impressed. Yeah, I think I haven't broken 1,000 yet, but most of the classes will break 100 each week. So I'll try to put the videos on my 3 places: my personal Facebook page, my Christian Apologetics Facebook page, and my YouTube channel, and you can watch them there. All right, so what's the course going to be? The course is basically a course that looks at worldviews, and we'll answer the question of what is a worldview. The goal for understanding a worldview and the goal for working towards building a biblical worldview, we're going to look at the goal being first, us. We ourselves want to have a biblical worldview as Christians, but not just stopping there, not just stopping with us, then our circle of influence. So we want to feel comfortable enough about the worldview and how it works and how it affects people so that we can go out and reach out to other people, talk to other people, answer questions when they ask questions of us. Now, how are we going to do this? We're actually going to start off with a test to establish a starting point. Right? We're going to start with a test. This test is for your own, you take it, you keep it, you score it, you don't share it with anybody. I suppose you could if you wanted to, but the purpose of the test is not to share, come up with some great score. It is basically a benchmark test. It's a test that says, this is how your worldview fits in terms of all these other worldviews. Your goal, obviously, is to move closer and closer to the biblical worldview and the scoring of this. So you can take it now or tonight or tomorrow, whatever, before next Wednesday. And then on the last class, I'll hand that again. I may not be here. Somebody may have to hand it out again on the last class, and then you can take it again and look for the improvement, okay? So I'll be handing out that test shortly. The course is a lecture and discussion around the test topics. The topics that are in the test cover all worldviews, all different kinds of worldviews, all right? Yes, biblical and yes, Christian, but there are going to be some worldviews that appeal to atheists, agnostics. So don't feel too uncomfortable with the questions. Yeah.
Can you make those larger?
Not from here. I can't.
No, I mean when you're making the slides.
Okay. Yeah. The rest of the slide today.
All the ones you had on that other study was perfect, but these are so tiny.
I think when I get to about 3 slides down, when we start the discussion, the letters will be bigger and bolder. Yeah. Okay. This is a case of trying to put too much on a slide at the same time. All right, lecture and discussion. We'll start off with a lecture, tonight and probably mostly next week, and then we'll start going through all of these topics one by one. There are 70, almost 80 questions on the test, and there's, I think, in eight different categories. We'll pick a few of them out of each category and put them up on the screen and discuss them. The purpose is not for me to say, here's my worldview to you. The purpose is to open up for discussion and come together. Actually, there's a lot more learning that takes place listening to other people and their worldviews. We each have our own flavors, and I really encourage people to open up and talk about it. In fact, you probably noticed that you've not seen that before. I'm wearing the mic for my phone, so I can record my voice going out on the video that I post. The problem with that is you really can't, when people are out there talking, I can't hear you on the video. So that's the second mic pointing your way. So when you do want to say something, just stare at that thing and be good and loud. If that doesn't do it, we'll have to start passing the mic around.
Testing, 1, 2. We'll see how that works.
Off the scale,
Okay.
Off the scale. All right. So lecture, discussion, self-study for depth. hopefully I can encourage you to actually study some of these things, raise another question in your mind to, well, gee, I never really thought about that. And if I think about that, here's what I think about that. I'm going to read some Bible and figure out how I fit in with that. So I'm trying to encourage you to do some self-study. And then at the tail end, 13 weeks from now, take the test again to measure your progress. If you don't talk much, if you don't interact much, not much discussion, this is only a 10-week course. Okay. My goal is to get up around 13 weeks. But I'm going to ask right up front now, if somebody would like to conduct the last week, I'm going to be out of town. So just something to think about. Good. Okay. All right. Ground rules. Anytime you have a class that is open for discussion, we need to have some ground rules. Talk about what we're doing. So here's the ground rules. We want to discuss and talk about things that are relevant and current, but don't make them political. Okay? And as much as possible, try not to be political in your answers. And I know a lot of these things very quickly can drift into a political discussion. If you have to go like liberal versus conservative, that's probably enough, okay? We don't need to start naming parties and discussions. If you do need to talk about people, whether it's past or present, in as much as possible, use their own words. Not, I heard somebody that said, somebody said this, somebody said that somebody said this. If you're going to go there, try to go in their own words. And if it's actually recorded somewhere or on television somewhere, that's even better yet. Events. All right, if you're going to discuss events, past and present, it is desired that you either give us the original information about that event, like if you participated, or where you got it from. I've seen so many discussions go right down the toilet because everybody's just, he said, she said, and there's no facts, there's no sources, it's all opinions, like ships passing in the night. So if we can follow these ground rules, I think we'll have some discussions that we can learn more from each other than you can learn from me. And I enjoy learning from you guys. All right, so what's a worldview? Technically, the fundamental cognitive, affective, and evaluative presuppositions of a group of people make about the nature of things and which they use to order their lives. Everybody got that?
Yeah, right.
Huh? No, but that's the technical. So what is it? What is it to us? What's a worldview to us? It's what you believe. It's what you believe is right and wrong. It's what you believe is good and bad. Okay. What you should do and what you should not do. Basically, the way you approach the world, every decision you make, you're making these kind of background decisions. Is it right or wrong? Good or bad? Should I do this? Should I not do this? And that right there drives the way you act in life, the way you think about things. And that becomes your worldview. So the simple definition is right, wrong, good, bad, should, shouldn't do, and how that influences you to interact with other people in the world around you. So what you believe about those three lines is what sets the basis for your worldview, but your worldview in terms of the effect that it has is how that influences people around you and the world around you, how you interact with them, okay? Does that make more sense for a worldview? Okay, good. Excuse me. There's something is in the pollen in the air. I don't know what's pollinating right now, but it's attacking my nostrils. All right, source and function. Most all of the stuff that we're going to talk about in terms of worldview can be traced back to a couple of simple basic questions. Like when a kid asks, why? Because, why, like 7 whys and you're right up to here with it, all right? Well, when you drive down most of the things we talk about, think about, act on, consciously, not subconsciously, but consciously, it usually comes down to these 3 basic questions. Questions that absolutely everybody asks themselves at some time in their life. They're going to ask these questions. Why am I here? Where did I come from? Where do I end up? What happens when I die? Where do I go? These are three basic questions that if you drive down to the root causes of most of your thinking and activity and questions, end up here. So the bottom fundamental layer of a worldview is how you deal with these three questions. And then it establishes that understanding, that worldview. It establishes a relationship between yourself and God. So first and foremost, what's the relationship? What's my worldview relationship between me and my God? The second relationship is with me and my family. These are the folks around me that I'm related to. And they can be different. People quite often will behave differently to God than they do to their family. And they will certainly behave different than a local community. So we'd like to be honest in all of these things, but we really have to look at the influence that it does and how we should deal with it at an individual layer. First God, second family, then our local community, the people that we interact with. And a community can be like our church group here. This class can be this congregation, or it could be, if we're involved in the community, the larger community, South Haven, Hernando, whatever. Then the extended community. The extended community is that a non-governmental, non-elected group of people that affect your life, but you don't actually relate to them one-on-one. All right, it's not like a family member I speak to every day, a community person that I meet at the Walmart, but it's someone that does affect me in the extended community, but it's not yet government. It's not through laws and regulations that effect takes place. And then the last one is called the Common Defense Unit, which depends on where you are in the world, what country you are, is going to be either a state, a country, or something of that nature. Excuse me, more water. If you have any questions, just stop me, please. All right, the source and function. The components of a worldview. We're going to look at the things that make up our worldview in terms of its effect on our religion, our family, and social relationships. That is the personal side of the world. Those are the things that really kind of get down personal. Economics and education are things that establish our worldview in terms of the world we have to live in, what we're affected by, and so forth. And then the final level is through law, well, not the final, through law and civil government. Each of these different categories has different ways in which you decide this is what's right and this is what's wrong, okay? A worldview. So the religion, family, social relationships tends to be a kind of a coordinated effort. Economics and education is more of an external worldview that does definitely affect me. Law and civil government, obviously that makes me decide how I act in public. And then last, not science and technology. Not everybody is into the science and technology, but I assure you, everybody is affected by science and technology. And it's changing so fast, just hang on for the ride. All right, so source and function, and at least in the US. Before I go too far, let me go ahead and stop there. All right, talk about the test for a minute. Go ahead and we got 4 there. All right, so this test, take with you. Yeah, thank you. There's some more up here. Let me just read one. Thank you. All right, so basically the first couple of pages of this test is the test itself, and just look at the first page. All right, so there's a section that members we talk about religion, family, and so forth, the different categories, 8 different categories. So the first section is religion, and these are the questions, and there are like 2 pages, I think, on religion. Almost 3 pages on management. And the pages hang together. Anyway, there's a number of pages on religion. The idea is to go through each of these questions and ask yourself whether or not you strongly agree, just agree, neither one, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. So those are your 5 choices. The question is not really a question, it is a statement of how you act. For example, Jesus Christ lived a sinless life. There's a factual statement. Do you agree with it, strongly agree, neither, disagree, or strongly disagree? All right. Obviously, I'm doing it in a church class, so we're kind of leaning towards the agree side there. But the questions are such that, and the test can be taken by people that have no relationship with Jesus whatsoever. So, so that's why we got the full 5 categories.
Scott, can you give an example for that first question? I mean, if you strongly agree, what's your point?
All right. The point, well, I'll get to the points at the tail end. I'll cover that. Alan is the one that always asks the question that's 2 slides forward. He's got it down to a science. Okay, so Jesus Christ lived a sinless life. Obviously, I would strongly agree. I would hope most of the people in this class would strongly agree. So I tick the box, strongly agree. All right?
How many points you get for that? That's
We're going to cover that in 2 more slides. I mean, another minute or 2. I'll cover that in a minute. Okay. All right. So there's the test. It covers all the different 8 categories. There's a total of, I think, 75 points or something like that. Anyway, get to the last page that is not folded over. On the last page is not folded over. This is your points for scoring. Okay? Points for scoring. So what you do then is you pull these 2 pages out, you go down through your test, okay? And if the answer was strongly agree, and you put strongly agree, you get 2 points. If the answer was strongly agree and you only agreed, you get plus 1 point. If you did neither, you get 0. If you disagreed, you get -1. And if you strongly disagree, you get -2. Okay? So next to each question on the page in the front, you put your score for that particular question, either 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. Okay? If your answer was strongly disagree and you strongly agreed, then you get -2. You see how it flipped over? So it's -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. All right, so if you got the correct answer, you got 2. If you absolutely got the wrong answer in the worst possible way, you get -2, which means if you really don't have much in the way of a biblical worldview, you can come out with a negative score. It is possible, okay, to come out with a negative score. The next 2 pages are folded over, and the reason they're folded over is that you wouldn't be tempted to open them up and find the answers. So the last 2 pages is your answer sheet, and that's where you find out if the answer is strongly agree, disagree. And after you finish taking the test, go ahead and check it with the answers and give you your scores. And then what do you do with the scores? Back to the first page. On the top of the first page, it says the ratings chart. If you get between 75 and 100% of them correct, then you have a strong biblical worldview. If you get between 50 and 74, you have a moderate biblical worldview, and we'll talk about that. 25 to 49 is a secular, and once you get down into the little numbers, 0 to 24, humanist, which is materialism, I guess. And then if you go under 0, then you're into the communist, Marxist, socialist. And that's the way you determine what your worldview is. The key to the whole thing is just do it. Keep it to yourself, do it, write the number somewhere, and based on what we go through in the discussion, go back through and say, how can I improve that particular facet of that particular type of that particular thought in terms of becoming more biblical.
So is this to be done this week?
Whenever you want to do it.
Oh, I mean, we're not going to discuss.
We're not going to look at it. We're going to look at, actually, there's like 75 questions. I think we're actually going to discuss about 15 or 20 of them. So I've picked a couple out of each of those sections that kind of give a good spread. We're going to put those questions up on the board, look at the question, okay? Then we'll discuss to find out what we think is the right answer. Then I will put up on the board the literal verse, chapter, book quote for what is the most appropriate answer. And then we'll put up on the board agree, disagree, strong, disagree. And so by the time we get to that answer, we will have at least had an opportunity to discuss it. Obviously, some of them are going to go real quick. Some of them could chew up in time as we discuss it. Right? Trust me, because I've taught this class like 4 times, 3 times. I wrote the test. I still haven't figured out how to master the test yet. I can't get 100%. So don't be bothered by it. Anyway, questions about the test. All right, and then you just keep that to yourself during the course of the course. You can improve or disprove, I guess. And then at the tail end, we'll hand out blank tests again. You can take them and see if you're getting better or worse, and so forth and so on. All right, questions, comments? All right, on to the meat. What are the worldviews? All right, so there's probably about 8 or 9 psychologically and sociologically recognized major worldviews. In the United States, we tend to find about 5 or 6 of them. And there's really only 3 or 4 that we're going to pay attention to. The first worldview, and this is the academic stuff. This is what you get in the college courses. So the academic stuff says the worldview in the United States, number 1 is traditional theism, the belief that the conviction that an all-knowing, all-powerful, and relational supreme deity created and rules the universe. But does that sound okay, everybody? Theistic. What's the difference between theistic and deistic? You know? Go ahead.
So a deistic worldview has God creating the universe, but not interacting with it.
Yeah. So the theist runs the whole thing and then runs it afterwards. Deist creates it and goes for a walk. All right? And we have some of both. In fact, Thomas Jefferson was probably the deist that most people remember. All right, so we're looking at theism. In the U.S. representation, about 46% of adults hold this view, identifying primarily as Christians, but you can also have a theistic view as a Jew or Muslim. Questions, comments? We will spend most of our time in this worldview. And this is a subset of this worldview. A biblical worldview is part of what we're shooting for out of this traditional theistic. All right, number 2, postmodernism and syncretism. This belief is that the view that truth is subjective or relative, combined with a rejection of absolute moral standards. This often results in a pick and match spirituality. All right? This is what I call, a lot of this group will claim to be Christians. A good chunk of this group will claim to be Christians. But the label that I put on them, I call them cafeteria Christians. These are the folks that, yeah, I've read the Bible. I've studied the Bible. I went to Sunday school and I heard the Bible. But the way they approach the Bible is like coming down a cafeteria food line. I'll take a scoop of that and give me a good helping of that. Don't put that on my plate. Get that off my plate. Get away. I'll have some of that. Oh, yeah, and a lot of that. Okay, they literally treat the Bible like a food line at the local restaurant. So these are the cafeteria Christians. This group has grown rapidly, particularly among younger demographics. Many blend aspects of Christianity with Eastern philosophies, pantheism, which is many gods, and
No. That's polytheism.
Oh,
polytheism is many gods.
Pantheism is
everything is God.
Every across God, yeah, or secular humanism. We'll have to get to humanism. Yeah, I'll wait on humanism. All right. Number 3, we're still dealing with the U.S. and we have a fair amount of them. Agnosticism and atheism. This is often referred to as naturalism or materialistic. If you've had any other classes with me, you've heard me refer often to time, space, material, TSM. These are the people that believe that the world happened to start, whether it was by whatever reason, it just happened to start, and everything in terms of its time, its space, its material, its energy, everything we see and hear and feel and touch is all there is. That's it. Just that stuff. And the most important thing to me in a world like that is me. I'm a humanism, or materialism. I only deal with materialistic things. The representation in the U.S., about 29% of American adults. This number is climbing. This is something that's kind of bothersome. All right, we got two more that show up, but not too badly. Cosmic humanism, the idea that humans are divine or possess a godlike nature, or that God represents a state of higher consciousness and human potential rather than an external entity. These are the people that feel like I am God, could be God. You may want to guess what the traditional, what the religion most close to this looks like? Heard of? This is a flavor almost of Mormonism, okay, where they actually believe that some people are going to become so good at it that they're going to be grown up to be gods and have their own kingdoms assigned to them. Anyway, but in colleges, you'll often run into a lot of weird stuff, okay? But that is cosmic humanism. But 17% of American population kind of believe that. They kind of treat themselves as gods or whatever. The last one is polytheism and animism. And this is the belief in multiple gods with different purposes and authorities, or the belief that spirits inhabit natural objects like trees, rivers, and the wind. So these are like the American Indians. We have this spirit god and that god and this god. This is the Greeks had the god of fertility, the god of good clean water or whatever. Lots of different gods. And in the U.S., we've got maybe about 8%. Probably 90% of what we'll talk about will be in 1 and 2, and 5% in 3, and practically nothing in the last 2. Okay, that's the highest level. Now, what makes up a worldview as we consider it for the purposes of building a biblical worldview? In order to figure out all the different characteristics that go into making a worldview, we want to focus on those pieces of it that help or hurt the ability to develop a biblical worldview. And I use biblical worldview as opposed to Christian worldview because a lot of these questions, because they are written neutral, they're not written to a specific Christian outlook or denomination or type, because they are written in a neutral fashion. A biblical worldview will include Muslims and Jews. We're all coming off of the same, we're coming off of God, Yahweh, Allah. So it's in terms of a biblical worldview, using that book we call the Bible to establish your worldview. All right, 2 axes. On the left-hand side, up and down arrows, I've got God, no or yes. Just a simple question. Does God exist? If we believe that God exists, it's above the line, yes. If we don't believe God exists, it's below the line. If it's anywhere near the line, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Left to right, who makes the rules? On the left-hand side, him. God makes the rules. So if you believe in your worldview that the rules that govern your life or should govern your life are made by God, if the standard that we're trying to achieve is by God, if the standard is outside of time, space, material, if it is not natural but supernatural, then he makes the rules. It's over on the left-hand side. If you believe that you make the rules, all the rules you make yourself, then you're over on the right-hand side. Okay? So that's the axes. The axes. All right, and here's some worldviews. Start down the lower right-hand side. The socialist, Marxist, and humanists. These are the ones that probably do not believe in any kind of God that we would recognize. Or if they do, it's probably just lip service to get by in public. But in terms of, if you wake them up in the middle of the night when they're half asleep and say, does God exist? No. Right? If they don't have a chance to think about it, they probably just don't believe God's out there. And then the difference between the humanist and the socialist Marxist is more a combination of whether or not you believe there is anything outside of time, space, material or not. And then the socialists and the Marxists are not even concerned about that. They're concerned about basically making the rules for everybody. If I had to summarize a socialist Marxist viewpoint, is that, hey, I know what's best for you. That kind of boils it down. Okay? Give me your money, I'll give it to whom I think is best. I know what's best for you. That's the socialist and Marxist view. All right, moving up to this, we have the secular, moderate biblical, and strong biblical. Strong biblical is where we want to go. Right? That's our goal. Strong biblical is not only knowing the Bible, having read the Bible and studying the Bible, understand what the Bible means, and you got to be careful with interpretation, because trust me, if you cherry pick things out of the Bible, you can make it mean just about anything you want to. So if you read it and study it and understand it and agree to live by what it probably really seriously does mean, and if you're honest with yourself, yeah, this is what it means, then you're over here in a biblical worldview. Okay? Even in cases that aren't really that critical. And what do I mean by that? A lot of people are going to spend some of their time, we just finished talking about heaven. Am I saved? Am I going to heaven? Am I going to live for eternity there or there? Okay. Am I saved? A strong biblical worldview, you are definitely going to take care of the 5 basics plus 1. Basically the 5, how do you get saved? 5 steps to salvation, and your baptism plus 1, staying there, doing what the rest of the Bible says you got to do in order to stay there. So over in the 5 plus 1 is, you'll definitely find it in the strong biblical. In the moderate biblical, maybe 4 plus 1 or 3.5 plus another, or maybe just 2.75. Here's where you're starting to do the select the things that are critical to me. All right. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible. Remember, the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, the Bible is more descriptive than prescriptive. It's a history book. All right. So a lot of what the Old Testament is descriptive. Descriptive stuff is not instructions on how you behave yourself. It's information on how they lived, so you can learn how to apply it yourselves. There is some prescriptive in the Old Testament, but it's more descriptive. In the New Testament, you get a lot more prescriptive, but you still have a full load of descriptive. There's a lot of descriptive stuff. In a strong biblical worldview, you will find people that are so concerned about missing something that they will take the descriptive and treat it as prescriptive. All right? Literally. I mean, I have walked into churches where they check my Bible to make sure I don't have an NIV. Yeah, I know. It's worth. I mean, but oddly enough, they didn't wash my feet. But they didn't play with snakes either. So, I'm not sure exactly, but they tend to be very, very strict with it. The moderate biblical worldview, I'm not sure if they understand that there's descriptive stuff, but they certainly act and treat like descriptive stuff. The problem is in the moderate biblical, you'll find some people treating as descriptive what's prescriptive. Classic example is baptism by water, fully immersion. And that's something that divides a lot of Christians. That's the moderate. The secular group, these are the figures. Most of these folks, they think they're Christian. They think they're going to heaven. Why? Well, because mom and dad are going to go, and they'll take me with them. And I'm certainly better than that guy, so I go to heaven. Or they just don't care. I'm amazed at the number of people that just don't think about it. It's just not on their radar. I'll worry about that when I'm getting closer to dying. Right now, I'm having too much fun doing this or that. And that's the secular worldview. All right, so we're going from strong biblical to selective biblical to maybe not anything but biblical. And then down below that, no, I don't even have God involved in my life. Questions or comments? All right. There's also some fringes out there. I said there's other ones. Trust me, and there are some worldviews that I just can't get my head around. I mean, there are people that flat out are nuts. And they have a worldview that, hey, there it is, folks. I'm not going to spend any time on it. It's just too much fun to look at them and laugh. You can't possibly believe that.
That goes to that attrition. What do you call it? The thing you taught, something about attrition.
I don't remember that.
Oh, Marty, you do.
He's already attrited it. Okay.
You just mentioned it the other day.
This is our path. Basically, wherever we are on that yellow arrow, we want to work ourselves up to the upper left-hand corner, okay? That's our path. And if you're a humanist now, if you're a non-believer in God, the universe was created with a big bang, accidentally, randomly, out of nothing, and I have evolved from the goo through the zoo to you, then you're down here in the humanist section, and you got a long way to go. Most of us, I suspect, are going to be right on the borderline between strong and moderate biblical. I know some people that are strong biblical. I've met people that literally push strong biblical strongly beyond the boundary. But anyway, so the yellow is the desired pathway. All right, let me talk about sources. I am not a researcher. I don't have my own original. I am an explainer. Like my wife calls it, a splainer. My role is to explain in simple language what I think is probably complicated language for people to understand. And so as a result of that, I have to rely on everybody else or other sources for information. Right? For this particular class, a lot of the stuff that I've learned comes out of the Pew Forum, PEW Forum. They do periodic, big, huge samples, studies, and research. And each year they do an RLS, a Religious Landscape Survey. I said year? No, about every 7 or 8 years, they'll do an RLS and publish it. The thing is got to be a couple hundred pages long, but it has all kinds of stats, and it is famous for being very, very accurate in terms of what it's measuring. The questions are written very neutral so as not to lean anybody in any particular direction. That's my primary source. I also use a book called Put Your Beliefs to the Test by Brandon House. Actually, he lives in Collierville. He came up with the idea of trying to measure a worldview in terms of its Christian relatable. He came up with 82 questions. Many of my questions I borrowed from him directly. Okay, I'd like to say I didn't plagiarize them. I just shared them with others. Okay, and a few of my own. So the idea of coming up with questions to calculate your worldview is out of his book, and of course the ultimate driving course is the Bible. In order to have a strong biblical worldview, the Bible has to have the final answer. Right? So let's look at some of the numbers before we actually get into pulling apart individual worldviews. Let's look at the numbers. Excuse me while my legs give out. All right, so in the lower left-hand corner, we got 2007 RLS. That's that Religious Landscape Survey. So in 2007, when the Pew Research folks did their research, 78% of U.S. adults identified as Christian, 16% as religiously unaffiliated, and 5% as other religions. So these religions other than Christianity. By the time we come to 2014 survey, the 78 had gone down to 71, the 16 had gone up to 23, and the other religions we just went from 5 to 6. So in terms of the non-Christian religions, they're not changing very much, but there is definitely a trend happening between Christian and unaffiliated. This is what has become now known as the nones, N-O-N-E, none. What is your religious affiliation? Nothing, none, no, nothing. In 2023-24, it's now down to 62 and up to 29%. 29% of people in the United States have no affiliation. If they feel the need to communicate with something outside their body, they'll go sit under a tree and say, oh, it's beautiful. I like that sunset. That's my inspiration. Okay? So there definitely is a trend, and it has not slowed down very much, except literally until the last, maybe a year. Within the last year or two, I'm seeing anecdotally, a lot of younger folks joining the church, getting baptized. I'm seeing more and more on the television of throngs of young folk coming up to be baptized. And I'd not seen that for a long time. So maybe we are on the cusp of a turn, but as it stands right now, we're heading in the wrong direction. There's a stat that's a little bit scary, and it goes back to some older research. We may touch on it later, but I'll just mention it now. Studied civilizations over the last hundreds of years. Any civilization that gave up on an exterior, more important force, a god, something outside of you need to answer to, over time, within 100 years, 86% of them failed. That's a little scary. And I think when we first, as a country, started at the level of our government saying, no, we don't want to talk to God anymore. We don't want God in our schools. We don't want God in our lives. Keep that home. Keep it in your home. Don't even open the door. Let's get rid of God. That started in 1973.
No, it started when Madeline and Maria O'Hara got involved in the government.
Technically, it actually started in '68 when California under Reagan passed the no-fault divorce. In '73, in the year '73, we had 4 major pieces of legislation that took God out of the schools, out of our lives, from the government. That's in '73. That means in 2073, 100 years, the United States is going to be gone. We're going to be out. We're done. We're done. Finished. Anyway, let's look at some of the numbers. I can hardly read this. Even I can't read this. All right, so here's Christians, 62%, other religions, 7%. There's the 29% down there. It's mostly atheists and agnostics and nothing in particular. So 19% of that 29 is nothing in particular. Over here we have evangelical Protestant, mainline Protestant, historically Black Protestant, Catholic, Latter-day Saints, and so forth. The biggest chunk over there are the evangelical Protestant. That's Protestants that are evangelizing. They're heading out into the community and saying, follow me. Followed up by the mainline Protestants. Followed by the Catholics. The Catholics make up about 19% in the United States, much bigger number around the world. Much bigger number around the world. So there's the top right now, evangelical Protestant. Within evangelical Protestants, here's the breakdown. Baptist family, and there are many flavors of Baptists, okay? Number of Baptist families. Methodist family, non-denominational family, I'll come back to that. Lutheran, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, Episcopalian, Anglican, and Restorationist family. Restorationist, that's us. That's where we're falling. So down here, under Restorationist Evangelical, we are trying to restore something to its original format, and we're trying to evangelize it. That right now makes up about 1%. All right, about 1% right now today. And then the other area that a number of our folks feel very comfortable with is what is classified as non-denominational family in the evangelical tradition. Non-denominational, the Church of Christ is not the only church that is non-denominational. There has been a huge increase just over the last 10 years of individual churches that do not associate with a denomination. The Cornerstone Church or My Backyard Church, you go around town, you find lots of them. They tend to have maybe half the characteristics that we have, some more, some a little bit less. You'll quite often see musical instruments. You'll often find women involved in the preaching, or at least I can't think of any right now that the head preacher, but like assistant preachers or youth preachers and women. What else? I'm amazed that most of them actually have water immersion baptism. You know, some of these non-denominational churches is baptism, fully immersion in water if a person asks for it, but it's not required. Anyway, so those are the non-denominationals. And if I travel, particularly if I travel in the Northeast, you have a hard time finding a Church of Christ. I mean, you have to go miles to find one that has a congregation of 6. So I'll often end up going to a non-denominational church. And a lot of my grandkids, great-grandkids, are getting baptized in non-denominational churches right here in Memphis. So that's our kind of closest relative, if we want to call it a relative. All right, what else? All right, and because we're talking about a biblical worldview, we need to look at how the Bible does affect it. All right, so here back, we're still from 1976 to, I can't even read the number. The top green line is the light green line. This light green line is the percent in which the Bible is the inspired word of God, but not everything in it should be taken literally. The next line down, which is the dark green line, is the percentage that the Bible is the actual word of God and is to be taken literally, word for word. Okay, so notice the top of them, the top 2 lines are basically looking at people that are going to use the Bible to guide their life in some form or fashion. One line says, but I can reserve myself from having to do those things that I don't necessarily think I agree with, or I don't like the way the translator translated it, or I don't like the way the preacher told me it is. The green line tends to be much, much closer to the Bible. And then that bottom line is the Bible is an ancient book of fables, legends, history, record, and moral precepts recorded by man. So those people recognize that a Bible exists, but they're going to put the Bible in the same category as any old book. Plato, Socrates, any old book. Notice that the lower line is slightly climbing, and the literal and not literal green lines are spreading apart. 28 to 47. So the last numbers we got was 47% believe it is inspired, but not literally. 28% believe it is inspired, says exactly. Why is that number up there? Because when they ask them, well, why don't you believe the Bible is inspired word for word? They come back with things like, well, look at John 35 says, I am the bread of life. No, you're not the bread of life. You didn't come in a loaf from the grocery store. I'm not going to slice you. You're not the bread of life. This is my body, my blood. No, that's a cracker and some grape juice. No body and blood. Born again. Oh, come on. How many times are you going to get born? Destroy this temple. In 3 days, I will rise it up. Come on. I mean, really. The rocks will cry out. I haven't heard a crying rock in a long time. Okay? So basically what people are saying is they recognize the Bible is out there, recognizes some good stuff, but they believe that what is actually, what do they call it? Syllogism? No, what's the word for something that, I'll think of it when I'm trying not to. Symbolic type stuff. Anyway, it's symbolic type language. They're using some type of language to symbolize something else. And they get hung up on that. And for that reason, they become cafeteria Christians. Okay? So verses like this, and when they get rid of the verse, they get rid of usually a couple of paragraphs around it and don't worry about it too much. All right. So back to our worldview. We're going to have to start another topic, shouldn't we? Let's try it. Okay. All right. The other major factor that we're going to get involved with here is absolute versus relative truth. What is the truth? We're going to build the worldview that we live our lives on, what we believe is true. People will do all sorts of stuff that they believe is for things that they believe are true, but they're not going to do any dangerous stuff for things that they know are false. That, for example, is one of the reasons why Islam, Muslims, we have some problems with. Their book actually, they don't want to die a martyr unless they think some of the rewards are true. As soon as you explain to them that, hey, they may not be true, that's it, dying's over with. I don't want any part of it. Okay. So, and that's also an example of why we think the apostles are excellent witnesses to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. I mean, they said, yeah, I saw him. He rose. That's true. Because if you're about to lose your life and they still say it's true, that makes a pretty good witness. I mean, all I had to do was say, no, I was just kidding. Leave me alone. They didn't. So people will die for the truth, but not for a lie. So that is usually a driving fact that's down at the bottom of most of the discussions we have. All right, so what's the truth? Absolute versus relative. Absolute in terms of a Bible worldview. The Bible is the unique, plenary, verbal, inspired Word of God, given once and complete by approximately 100 AD. A couple of words there. Unique. How many variations of God's Word are there? We have lots of variations that we have translated and untranslated and retranslated and rewritten and introduce our opinions, but there is really only one true inspired source. Plenary. Plenary is just a fancy way of saying authority or power. You are the plenary power. If you're paid a lot at the speakers convention, you are the plenary speaker. Okay, so that means you have power. Verbal. By verbal, I'm not talking about literally the meaning of the word. Verbal is literally all the levels of word. All the things that Marty tried to teach us in grade class. Nouns and verbs and adjectives, and it's active, indicative, aorist, third person singular, and all that sort of stuff. Down to that level of detail, it's inspired. Okay, the inspired Word of God given once. Why is that important? Why is it given once? Suppose it was given again and again and again. What book was the Mormon religion based on? A book that was written many, many years later in upstate New York, told a guy by the name of Smith by an angel called Moroni. So it was written once and complete by 100 AD, roughly. Okay. On the other side, there is no such thing as absolute truth. All truth is personal, relative, situational, and temporal. And people that fall on that side, the relative truth side, firmly believe that there is no such thing as an absolute truth. You cannot absolutely know anything. It's all personal, relative, situational, and temporal. So the way that I analyze or look for the truth, I use a test called the Roadrunner principle. Remember this cartoon, Roadrunner? Chase Wile E. Coyote over the edge of the cliff. And when did he realize that he was standing 20 feet beyond the cliff with nothing under him? The whole shape in the desert floor of a coyote, right? Right? The Wile E. Coyote is when you realize that what you are saying or believing or doing has no basis in fact. You just messed up bad. You went past the edge of the cliff. So we're going to use the Wile E. Coyote test. In order to do the Roadrunner test, first understand the logic, the three laws of logic. There are certain principles. They're called first principles. Principles are rules and the way things work, laws and so forth, that existed outside of the universe. There are some things that were factually true even before God made the entire universe. And if he gets rid of the whole universe, it's still going to be true. It's true because he is these characteristics. They're usually called first principles, like cause and effect. Cause and effect is the first principle. If I got an effect, I gotta look for the cause. Because cause causes effects. You don't get an effect without a cause, right? There are three laws within that first principle group called the laws of logic, and that consists of the law of identity, excluded middle, and non-contradiction. All right, what's that? Identity is a truth statement, which is what identifies something. A truth statement describes something such that there can only be one of them. Like, for example, this is my red plastic Swiss Army knife, 11 blades and 13 functions and so forth and so on. And so there's Scott's knife, and that is a true statement that describes my Swiss Army knife. Okay. And let me go for another. All right. So here's my keys, and they got a different description to it. Okay. And there's a description that defines these will never end up pointing to this, and vice versa. It is a unique identity description, a statement of identity. And between the two of them, there is an excluded middle. There isn't a half knife, half key. Okay, the excluded middle. Those two are the basic ones. And from that, we get the non-contradiction, not law of non-contradiction. You turn the statement back on itself. If it is self-contradicting, it is false. If I stand here and say, I can't speak a word of English, what happened? I just told you that in English. My biological parents had no children that lived. You turn the thing on itself, it's false. It can't possibly be true. It's a self-contradictory statement. So then how do you answer some question like when a guy says, hey, there's no absolute truth? When someone tells you that it's not absolutely true, there is no such thing as absolutely true, what do you tell them?
There is absolute truth.
No, they don't believe it.
There is absolute truth.
They don't believe that.
Jesus Christ said, I am
They
the
don't believe
truth,
that.
the way,
I
and the
begin
life."
to think they don't believe that, but I tell you what they do believe.
I'm telling you,
I'll tell you what they do believe. If you turn around and ask them back the question, is that absolutely true? When someone says there is no absolute truth, if you go, is that absolutely true? They realize that there are coyotes standing over the edge of the cliff. I just said there is none, but by saying it is none, if there is none, how can I say there is none? You got to bring it back to something that they cannot argue with things like the Bible or anything else. I can't argue with a non-contradictory statement. You can't know the truth. Someone says, hey, you can't know the truth. Hey, how do you know that? True for you, but not for me. Well, if that's true for you and not for me, then why should I worry about your truth? Because it's not for me. Again, you turn the statement back on itself and it falls apart real quickly. Bottom line is, if a statement about a referent, when I refer to something, I refer to my red knife. If a statement about a referent is true in the logic sense, it is true for all persons and all places and all times. Until I give this knife to somebody else, it's Scott's knife. Until I break off one of the blades, it's got 11 of them, or 11 tools, so forth and so on. Okay? It's true for me and you. It's going to be true later. It was true yesterday. That is a true statement. So let's just look at a truth exercise, and I hope this works. You can't hear a thing.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Let me do that again. I'm never going to do it again.
Now we're going to run a few tests. This is a simple lie detector. I'll ask you a few yes or no questions and you just answer truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so there's my closer for the class. Yeah, we get back into the clouds again with the worldview. Any questions about absolute truth, relative truth, worldviews in general? Okay, very good. We'll see you next week.